Коллеги, всех приветствую. Меня зовут Александр. Сегодня я расскажу про...
Hello everyone, my name is Alex and today I'm going to share with you about the art of deception in the cyberspace. The deception technology which we have been developing for a number of years,
больше 5 лет.
for over 5 years.
Лидер российского рынка.
And now we are the leader of the Russian market in this segment. And again, we have implemented lots of projects and have gathered substantial experience in cyber deception. Our main clients are banks,
сегмента,
from the top segment, industrials and others.
Что нужно знать в первую очередь, почему это?
Now what do we need to know? Why this is important?
Большинство АПТ-группировок,
Because most of the APT groups, they breach the perimeter using phishing. Just a simple, trivial, sometimes a bit more complex, but it is a phishing anyway.
часто АПТ-группировки
And next, often APT groups, they're using compromised credentials
пытаются повысить себе
or compromise them, trying to boost their privileges, to
дальше по инфраструктуре, так называемый
move deeper into the lateral movement, move deeper into along the infrastructure. And according to the report of the Kaspersky Lab,
большинство TTP-шек,
most of those TTPs on your screen, you can see that. As we can see at the top, it's like account validation and a lot of remote services. And of course,
идет при помощи
moving along the infrastructure happens through the legitimate protocols, SNB, SSH, and SSH, and many others. And also, attackers, they like to, second from the bottom, you can see, is 1555.
password store.
Get credentials from the password stores. And
Несложная задача.
it is not difficult to do, to dump a memory and to get some credentials and then do lateral movement into the infrastructure. Why am I saying that? Because if you look at this breakdown, now you can see how companies are being hacked.
Вернусь к предыдущей теме.
And I want to go back to my previous topic. It's important to understand that more often than not, if you look at remote services, all these protocols in any infrastructure, they are allowed. Nobody stops SSH, RDP, and other versions. And that's why it's more difficult for the SOC centers to identify attackers on the horizontal movement when they're past the perimeter and they're trying to move laterally. Now, any company in Russia and in the world, any big or major business, it is not only about like a business that they do, it's also an IT company, because digitization and assets, they have gone to all of the business area. Basically, any company today is an IT company. And this is why the threat landscapes for many companies is growing by leaps and bounds.
Доступность утилит,
utilities access or hacking utilities access, which you can download in Darknet.
проекты.
You can also do some projects on the GitHub and feel like you're a hacker and you're trying to break into a lot of exploits, the free, the commercial ones. There was an exploit published $1.7 million for an exploit. I think it's quite expensive, right? But for the APT groups, especially like a pro-government, it's cheap. It's cheap to be able to destroy some kind of the whole industries in unfriendly country. This would be okay price for them. And the biggest pain for any organization would be a human factor, because people are people, and people are clicking on the links whenever the phishing message comes that your salary right now has gone down, and this is explanation why, and people still put on this link. Even if you do a lot of training, there's always will be somebody who will press the link and will, in fact, microsegmentations comes to help right here. And today I want to share why deception is quite an important technology, which have to become must-have for any big and smaller business. We all remember honeypots. Please raise your hand if you know what honeypot is. Most of you. Honeypot is quite an old technology described in 80s. And basically, if you do not know, this is like a basically honeypot, which is attracting hackers or attackers, and very often, historically, honeypot had been used like on the internet. They would be put on the perimeter, collecting some telemetry about the movements, about certain attacks even, and attempts to exploit certain vulnerabilities. But in enterprises, honeypots in the first two honey-nets, they were not commercially successful in 20 years. Why is that? Why or why they were not successful? Sorry. It is easily explainable because they've never been like scalable. Yeah, you can play with it. It's a good technology. You can deploy honeypot and you can see, and then basically that would be the end of it. Until the world saw this like a third reincarnation, as we call it. Some people say it's a number 4 iteration. Some say it's a number 3. It's a distributed deception platform, or just deception. The pluses of this program, and I will try to see why deception is not a honeypot. We are operating whenever we are speaking about this technology. We're using like two main entities, like traps, and the traps can be placed in different locations. And for example, there is a host, DNS, all up. And so this is like a baits, and this could be emulation, and traps could be like 3 levels, 7 level, and so on. And basically, what is the case? What is the juice of this technology? Because those baits and traps are interconnected in the system, in the ecosystem, and each of the decoy or bait is referring to the trap. You can place them like 1,000,000 times. No attacker will come to them, and this will be enough. This will not be scalable. It will be expensive. Sorry, it will be like open source. But in case of deception, we are getting like connectivity of those entities, and we are like spreading those decoys or baits. We'll just not just put a honeypots, but we're also like a spreading thing like this honey, so to speak, all over our infrastructure. Why is it so efficient? Because like if we're deploying honeynet somewhere, then attackers still, through the human factor, that I've mentioned before, they are going to break the perimeter through the phishing, and they're going to get into like a real operational host. So honeynets, like somewhere like nearby, they do not make much sense. And as I've mentioned, most of the endpoints or cyber attacks, they happen with the final points, and in this case, we just do this kind of breadcrumbs. And they also can be distributed, but the thing is that we are spreading them all over infrastructure where the hackers can come. The early detection triggers. And it looks like very realistic if they're doing their attack with this kind of kind of tool like a Cobalt Strike. And for them, it's going to look in the console, it's going to look like, some kind of interesting and cool data. And they will, of course, attempt to dump it and use it.
И, естественно, все эти шаги никогда бы не закрылись обычным банальным ханипотом. Ханипот начинается здесь, но сюда злоумышленника нужно привести. Для этого нужно применять active defense, так называемую активную защиту. И есть разные типы ловушек. Там дальше уже дело техники. То есть мы можем эмулировать там какую-нибудь админку того же чекпоинта, фортинета, уязвимые версии разных протоколов.
So this could be like a vulnerable versions of different protocols, and this is not like so important. But as long as this kind of guy would be caught and with this kind of breadcrumbs and eventually end up in a trap, what response scenario look like when we're speaking about the cyber deception? Then this attacker ends up in a host, and then we have to understand that very oftentimes scenario is like increase in privileges. If you remember the slide with distribution of different TTPs, like a Mitra type of TTPs, then the account validation was like in the top. And if, for example, the attacker was able to find some kind of tasty entity and try to validate, then honeypot is not used. So deception is not quite a honeypot. It's very, very, frequent scenario. You need to, at the SOC, you need to add the whole technology, the whole bunch. And I'm going to go back. And also, there are scenarios when we simply use these breadcrumbs and we send them to honeypot and we give all the incidents into the security operations center. Now, what's important with this technology? That
технологический сегмент — это там отдельная история, я про нее верну.
Basically, technological segment is one thing, but we also have a lot of like specific things. If you are a financial and credit organization, you need your own kind of traps and breadcrumbs. So there are some like infrastructure features. You have to span different VLANs, different subnetworks, different chapters, and it's difficult to do it on the open source, sometimes even impossible, on a different honeypots. But if any of you will decide to use an open source honeypots, then there are several rules which you have to follow, and basically like taking inventory. As I've mentioned, open source have always had problems with scaling up, and scaling up requires to have, for the good scaling up, you always know what you have to scale up. So inventory is good because you can, in addition to efficient defense, you can do the increase of the attack surface with your honeypot. They may be able to persist in the system and to spread within your system. It's not a very nice thing to do. You should never implement deception, which is just by default. I'll say deception by default can be easily seen by a simple kind of on map, and you can see that this is basically just a honeypot. And of course, you have to connect it always into security center, because nobody was going to check logs. The person who is deploying honeypot in organization, they've been playing this for like 3 days.